239 people boarded a plane and vanished without a trace. No mayday call. No distress signal. No wreckage, not for a very long time. And to this day, no one knows exactly what happened. Now think about this for a second. A modern Boeing 777, one of the most advanced commercial aircraft ever built, equipped with multiple tracking systems, in constant communication with air traffic controllers, simply ceased to exist. Not in a storm. Not in a war zone. On a perfectly clear night, in one of the most trafficked air corridors in the world. So where did it go? And why, after more than a decade, hundreds of millions of dollars, and the largest aviation search in human history, do we still not have a complete answer? To understand how something this impossible could happen, we have to go back to the beginning. March 8, 2014. Kuala Lumpur International Airport, Malaysia. It's just past midnight, technically the early hours of a Saturday morning, and the airport is buzzing with the quiet efficiency of a late-night departure. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 is preparing for a routine 6-hour journey to Beijing, China. The aircraft is a Boeing 777-200ER, a twin-engine wide-body jet with an impeccable safety record. The kind of plane people board without a second thought. On this night, 227 passengers are settling into their seats. 12 crew members are preparing the cabin. Among those passengers, families, businesspeople, students, 2 children under the age of 2. The captain was Zahari Ahmad Shah, 53 years old, a veteran pilot with over 18,000 hours of flight experience. A man who had dedicated his life to the sky. His first officer, Farik Abdul Hamid, was 27, relatively new to the 777, but by all accounts competent and eager. By every measure available to the people in that airport that night, Flight MH370 was just another flight. At 12:41 a.m., Flight MH370 pushes back from Gate C1 and begins its journey. Air traffic controllers in Kuala Lumpur confirm clearance. The engines roar to life. The plane rolls down the runway. And then, into the night sky, MH370 climbs upward, disappearing into the dark. For the first 38 minutes, everything is completely normal. MH370 climbs to its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, reaches a cruising speed of around 905 km per hour, and proceeds exactly as planned. Air traffic control receives routine check-ins. The plane is tracking perfectly along its designated flight path. Then, at 1:19 a.m., something happens that no one on the ground fully understands until it is far too late. Malaysian Air Traffic Control hands the flight over to Vietnamese Air Traffic Control, a standard procedure as the plane crosses into Vietnamese airspace. And in that moment of transition, the last known words from the cockpit are spoken. Good night, Malaysian 370. Vietnamese Air Traffic Control waits for the handover call that never comes. They try to contact MH370. No response. They try again. And again. Meanwhile, on the radar screen, the blip that was Flight MH370 simply stops. There is no distress call. No emergency signal. No indication of mechanical failure. The plane is just gone. By 2:40 a.m., it is clear that something is deeply wrong. Malaysian authorities are alerted. A search and rescue operation is initiated. But what no one on the ground knows, not yet, is the truth that is sitting in classified military radar data, waiting to be discovered. A truth that will turn this from a tragedy into one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. Here is where the story fractures. Because while civilian radar lost MH370 at 1:21 a.m., the Malaysian military's primary radar, the kind that doesn't need a plane to announce itself, had picked up something extraordinary. An unidentified aircraft had turned. Not continued north toward Beijing. Turned. A sharp, deliberate, westward arc back over the Malaysian peninsula. This was not a mechanical failure sending a plane spinning into the ocean. This was a programmed course change. Someone or something had reprogrammed MH370's flight path, turned off the transponder that broadcasts the aircraft's position to civilian radar, and then guided the plane silently into some of the most remote airspace on Earth. 4 hours. But then, investigators discovered something even more disturbing. Even after the transponder was switched off, even after the plane had effectively gone dark to the civilian world, it was still talking. Not with words. With pings. A company called Inmarsat, a British satellite communications firm, had a satellite in geostationary orbit above the Indian Ocean. And MH370 was registered to use this satellite network. Every hour, automatically, the aircraft's communication system would handshake with the satellite, a brief electronic ping that essentially said, "I am still here." And those pings kept coming. For 7 hours after the transponder went silent. Using the timing and angle of those pings, Inmarsat engineers, working around the clock, in a kind of desperate mathematical detective story, were able to calculate 2 possible corridors. One going north, over Central Asia. One going south, into the vast, empty, merciless southern Indian Ocean. There was no air traffic control radar coverage over either path. There were no witnesses. There was nothing but ocean and math, and the fading memory of a plane that refused to disappear quietly. What followed was the largest, most expensive, and most heartbreaking aviation search in human history. Within days, 26 countries had mobilized ships, aircraft, and satellites. The search area grew to cover millions of square kilometers, an area roughly the size of the continental United States. And in that vast expanse of open ocean, the searchers found almost nothing. The search focused initially on the South China Sea, the most logical area based on the plane's last known position. Ships and aircraft combed the water for days. Satellite imagery was analyzed. Debris was spotted, and then identified as trash. Ocean refuse. False hope after false hope. When the Inmarsat analysis was completed and the southern Indian Ocean became the primary focus, the search entered a new phase, and a new dimension of difficulty. The southern Indian Ocean is not just remote. It is arguably the most hostile stretch of ocean on the planet. Waves regularly reaching 6 to 10 meters. Currents so powerful they can scatter debris across thousands of kilometers in weeks. And beneath the surface, unmapped underwater mountains and trenches that had never been explored by human eyes. Over the following 2 years, more than 120,000 square kilometers of ocean floor were mapped by specialized underwater drones called AUVs, autonomous underwater vehicles. These torpedo-shaped machines descended to depths that would crush a submarine, sweeping the seafloor with sonar inch by inch, month after month. They found ancient volcanoes, undiscovered ridges, entire mountain ranges that no one had ever known existed. They did not find MH370. In January 2017, after searching nearly 120,000 square kilometers without a single confirmed piece of wreckage on the ocean floor, the formal underwater search was suspended. The governments of Malaysia, Australia, and China, who had collectively spent over $160 million, announced that the search was over. Without a credible lead on a specific location, further searching was not justified. So, what actually happened to Flight MH370? There is no shortage of theories. Some are grounded in rigorous analysis. Some border on the speculative. And one, perhaps the most disturbing of all, has never been conclusively ruled out. Theory 1. Deliberate pilot action. From the moment military radar revealed that MH370 had made a controlled, programmed turn, investigators began looking at the people in the cockpit. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah came under intense scrutiny. Authorities discovered that a week before the flight, he had practiced a similar route on his home flight simulator, one that ended in a remote stretch of ocean. His personal life was examined, a troubled marriage, financial difficulties, political passions. But here is the critical word that hangs over everything. Nothing conclusive was ever found. No note. No manifesto. No final message. Nothing that locked the door on a definitive answer. Theory 2. Hijacking, by someone on board, or possibly even remote control. 14 passengers and crew on board held some form of aviation or technical background. Among the passengers were individuals whose backgrounds were quietly investigated by multiple intelligence agencies. But again, no evidence of conspiracy was found that led anywhere definitive. The hijacking theory remains open, but unproven. Theory 3. Catastrophic mechanical failure. Some aviation experts have argued that a fire or structural failure in the cargo hold, possibly related to the lithium-ion batteries listed in the cargo manifest, could have incapacitated the crew, caused the autopilot to fly the plane aimlessly for hours, and ultimately resulted in the aircraft running out of fuel and crashing. The turn back and the hours of flight can, under this theory, be explained by an automatic system responding to a crisis the crew could no longer manage. It is a theory that requires no villain, only tragedy. But then, investigators discovered something even more disturbing about the flight path itself. The final satellite ping, the last handshake between MH370 and the Inmarsat satellite, at 8:19 a.m., showed the aircraft had just completed a sudden change in altitude. The data was consistent with a rapid descent, a dive. And this final ping was followed, about 90 minutes later, by a partial ping, an incomplete handshake suggesting the system had briefly tried to reconnect, then failed. Possibly the last gasp of a plane falling toward the ocean. Theory 4, and perhaps the most quietly terrifying, is that whoever was in control of that aircraft knew exactly what they were doing. That the route was chosen because it led to a part of the ocean where the seafloor had never been mapped, where search operations would be nearly impossible, and where wreckage, if it came to rest in certain undersea valleys, might never be found at all. Whether that person was acting alone, as part of a larger plan, or in a moment of private devastation, is a question that the evidence, or rather, the absence of it, refuses to answer. For more than a year after the disappearance, there was not a single confirmed piece of physical evidence from MH370. The plane had become, in a very literal sense, a ghost. And then, on July 29, 2015, on a beach on Réunion Island, a small French territory in the western Indian Ocean, a local man named Johnny Begg noticed something strange washed up in the surf. It was a flaperon, a section of the wing's trailing edge. Boeing confirmed it was a component type found only on the 777. Malaysian authorities confirmed it was from MH370. After 515 days of silence, the ocean had finally given something back. It was confirmation that MH370 had, in fact, gone into the water. But it answered almost no other question. It was a fragment, a whisper, a full stop at the end of a sentence that had no beginning. Over the following years, more debris washed ashore. A piece of wing identified as a right outboard flap. An engine cowling. Several interior panels. Bags belonging to passengers. By 2020, 33 pieces of debris had been found, scattered across the western Indian Ocean coastline, from Mozambique to Tanzania to South Africa to Madagascar. Ocean drift modeling confirmed these objects had come from approximately where the search had been focused. They had traveled thousands of kilometers over years, deposited gently on shorelines that people actually walked. But here is the cruel irony. Every piece of debris confirmed that MH370 had crashed into the Indian Ocean. And every piece of debris told us almost nothing about why, how, or exactly where. The debris was real. The answers were not. But this story is not just about radar data and satellite pings and ocean currents. It is about 239 human beings. And the people who loved them. Among the passengers was a group of 20 employees from a semiconductor technology firm, traveling together for a conference. There were artists, students, honeymooning couples, a man who had spent years saving for his dream vacation, parents flying home to children who were waiting, a grandmother meeting her grandchild for the first time. Every seat on that plane was a world. And all of those worlds simply went silent on March 8, 2014. The families of the passengers have lived in a particular kind of purgatory that has no name. They are not survivors. They are not mourners in the traditional sense. They have no grave to visit. No definitive moment of loss. Many refused, still refuse, to accept that their loved ones are gone, because without a body, without wreckage, without proof, hope becomes a kind of prison. Groups of family members, predominantly Chinese, since 153 passengers were Chinese citizens, have protested outside Malaysia Airlines offices, marched in front of government buildings, and spent years demanding answers that no government has been willing or able to give. In 2018, a private company called Ocean Infinity was granted a no-find, no-fee contract by the Malaysian government to resume the search. Their fleet of 8 AUVs combed an additional 112,000 square kilometers over 3 months. They found several previously unknown wrecks. None of them were MH370. In May 2018, the search was suspended again. The Malaysian government released a 495-page safety report that concluded, the cause of the deviation from the planned route was not determined. After 4 years, they had confirmed only what they did not know. In 2024, as the 10th anniversary of the disappearance approached, Malaysia announced a new search, again partnering with Ocean Infinity. New analysis of the satellite data, combined with updated drift modeling, suggested a specific zone south of the already searched area that had never been thoroughly examined. The families held their breath, again. The world watched, again. As of today, no confirmed wreckage has been located on the seafloor. No black boxes have been recovered. No flight data recorder has been read. The cockpit voice recorder, which holds the last conversations in that cockpit, has never been found. We do not know what was said in those final hours. We do not know if it was panic, or silence, or something else entirely. H370 remains the greatest unsolved mystery in modern aviation. It has outlasted search efforts, shattered confidence in global tracking systems, devastated families, and humbled the most powerful intelligence agencies in the world. It is a case that proves, in the most brutal way imaginable, that even in an age of GPS satellites, big data, and global surveillance, a 272-ton commercial aircraft can still just vanish. And somewhere, right now, at the bottom of the southern Indian Ocean, in the cold and the dark and the crushing silence of a place where no sunlight has ever reached, Flight MH370 is still waiting to be found. 239 people are still waiting for someone to bring them home.